All right, so a bit of housekeeping. This doesn't count in my sermon time because there's some stuff I have to clear up because this is a hard Sunday. So first of all, the collect that we had in the very beginning, that opening prayer, has the sacrificial language, which is theologically correct, but if you don't think about it right, it can be problematic. Just know that we in the Episcopal Church do not believe that Jesus had to die because God needed to punish someone, and Jesus took that punishment for us. That's something different. If you need to talk to me about that later, more housekeeping, still not part of my time. The book of Romans, this was actually brought up to me in our 8 a.m. service. It ends with this line about God and keeping us trapped in order that God could show mercy. And that is the trap of humanity, the trap of finitude, which also Jesus had, right? So we'll get to that later. It's not like Jesus makes sure that we're a little bit bad, or God makes sure we're a little bit bad so that God can show mercy. Okay? Time can start. So when I was working in Anderson, there was an unhoused man that started hanging around church. And he wasn't disruptive at all. He never asked for anything. In fact, people were like, seems like he's really trying to join. He would come to Bible studies and evening programs, asking me all kinds of questions about the liturgy. And he wasn't asking for help, was not asking for help. But because people are good, they knew he needed help and started giving it to him. Now, I can't tell you whether this was some grand plan of his all the time or not. I don't know. But I can tell you once he started getting help, then he started asking for more help. And my boss, in all his wisdom, thought, oh, new guy, why don't you handle this? This will be a great learning experience for you. So, and it wasn't just deal with it. It was you decide, how much do we help him? Do we help him at all? It's all on you. There's money available if you need it. And that's a lot of pressure. But I became his point of contact, so I tried to help him when I could, and it seemed like he needed more and more. He started meeting me outside on weekdays, standing outside of my office when I got in the morning. But we were able to help him in some ways, and it seemed to be going well until it wasn't. It was mostly fine, but then slowly things got worse. He started calling me sometimes pretty late in the evening, clearly not in his right mind. Whether he was drunk or high or something else, I don't know. We got him some temporary housing through a program, and he got kicked out. Things like this. And I was not in my best moment. I was tired of dealing with him, and I was losing my patience. I started getting shorter with him. I started declining those calls more often. I actually told him, hey, I feel like you're taking advantage of me. Then one day he asked me to give him a ride. And I was done at this point. I'm like, he just got kicked out of the housing and he wants a ride somewhere. I said, okay, where? Doctor's appointment. What doctor? I'm not gonna tell you that. Well, where is this doctor? I'm not gonna tell you that. You will get in the car and I'll tell you where to turn. And I was pretty upset. And I pretty much said, I'm not doing this. But he persisted, just persisted. Bro, give me a drive. I know where it is. I'll tell you where to go. It's not that big a deal. The gospel today has a lot to tell us about persistence. Jesus just had a conflict before this story with the religious leaders about his disciples not following the ritual purity laws before they were eating. But really, it wasn't about eating. It wasn't about just that. It was about all of the ritual purity laws, all of those hundreds of laws that Jews have been keeping for thousands of years. So Jesus' answer to them is also, it's about food, right? He actually talks about the sewer, but it's not about food. It's not what goes in that defiles a person, because by tomorrow that food is digested and expelled, flushed down the toilet, so to speak. It's what comes out of the heart that defiles a person. The things that we do, read that list of sins he outlines, the things that we do that create division, that is what defiles us. This is the third time that Jesus had this same argument with the Pharisees. And what's telling is the first two times, Jesus quotes the prophet Hosea in his answer. And he says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. There are not any religious laws or customs that you can keep that can make you a good person. It's not how it works. It's how you show up in the world for each other. Any rule that you break can be forgotten tomorrow. This morning, another prophet, Isaiah, tells us to maintain justice and do what is right. And then read the next line. It's not so that we will achieve salvation. It's because salvation is already coming. It's get ready for it. And even foreigners and outcasts are included in this salvation. It's coming to everyone. They'll all be gathered together right along with those already gathered. And this is really good news. Not only for us, but apparently for Jesus, because right after this, he goes to the region of Tyre and Sidon and acts like a complete jerk. A woman approaches his group, shrieking in despair because her daughter needs help. And I say shrieking on purpose to give you an idea of the scene, because the Greek word is ekrazin, which is the same word to describe the croak of a raven. This is a raw, carnal scream that she is saying, "Help me." And he doesn't just ignore her. When she finally gets his attention, he calls her a dog. And this is a common racial slur of the time that Jews would have used for Canaanites or other non-Jews. So he falls prey to society and how it is. Jesus, our Jesus, does that. And I don't know why he acts this way. I have no doubt that he is exhausted. He's been traveling around, he's been preaching, teaching, and healing, constantly bombarded by requests and questions. Right before this, he tries to get away to a deserted place, and a bunch of crowd shows up and follows him, and that's where he feeds them all with a couple of loaves and fish. I have no doubt that he's exhausted. There are moments in Scripture when Jesus' humanity is on full display. This is one. But luckily for Jesus, and I guess for us, since we follow him, his lack of care here in the beginning isn't the end of the story, because this woman, this foreigner, becomes a prophet and speaks truth to Jesus, speaks truth to his power. Where Jesus was using the prophet Hosea to preach mercy to the religious authorities, now this Canaanite foreign woman that he has just called a dog preaches mercy back to him. She says, "Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." And don't let this imagery of bread and crumbs go, because that's the crux of the whole thing. I just told you about a chapter ago where Jesus fed thousands of people with a couple of loaves of bread. And guess what? He does the exact same miracle in another chapter. This one sits in the middle of two feeding miracles, and it's about crumbs of bread. People ask for the leftovers, the crumbs that would have fallen from the table. But in our story, these crumbs are enough to fill baskets full, enough to have a whole nother feast. They're not just crumbs. Now I'm going to say it outright. I think Jesus was wrong here. I think he made a mistake. He ignored her, he insulted her, but he was human. And the gift here for us is that, like eating ritually impure food, his mistake doesn't have to define them and flush it down the toilet. Because he does the next right thing. He makes it right. He reorients back to the justice and the mercy that he was there to spread. When my unhoused companion asked for that ride, and I told him no, but he was persistent, I basically made the decision. In my head, I didn't tell him that this was the last one. Wasn't doing it anymore. I was annoyed. But I relented, so he got in the car, and he's like, "Yep, turn here, go down, get on the expressway." And I just drove to the edge of town, pulled into the strip mall. He went into one of the storefronts. Didn't look like a doctor's office to me. So I'm on my high horse, Googling the name of it, seeing what I just aided and abetted. And it was a long-term rehab and recovery facility. I didn't hear from him for a few days, even though he had told me, "I'll call you to come pick me up in a little bit." Days went by. Finally, I get a message on my phone. "Hey, it's me. Wanted to let you know you won't hear from me for a while. I'm in rehab." Thanks. Click. I think you might have actually said, "Talk to you later." I'm not sure he even said thanks. All of the hours that I spent with this guy, none of the help that I offered seemed to land, and it felt hopeless. And I had basically given up. But none of that defined the outcome because God's mercy finds a way. God's mercy is for everyone. We know this. God's mercy was for me in my shortness and temper. God's mercy was for my unhoused friend in his addiction. God's mercy was for the crowds following Jesus and trying to learn. God's wisdom, God's mercy was for the Canaanite woman who showed up out of nowhere and asked for help. And it doesn't always look like we expect it to or show up when we want it to, but it's always there if we're willing to insist on it. Gotta be persistent about it. So whether you've made mistakes just a moment ago or years ago, whether you've made the same mistake once or over and over and over, you can always flush it. They're passing actions. They do not define you as long as you're willing to do the next right thing, to bring God's mercy to those who need it, even to the people who sometimes we look and think, you don't deserve it. This Canaanite woman, this unhoused man, people in our lives are only asking for crumbs, but not because they want the little bits of leftovers that we don't want, some lesser portion. They're asking for the crumbs from God's table that we know are infinite, that they are a feast unto themselves. They never run short. Mercy is not rationed. There is no scarcity here. And you know what? The master and the master's children and the dogs, they all end up eating the same bread. And it's the same bread we're getting ready to share in a few minutes. Amen.